Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about God. Not the God of rules, not the God of fear, not the God we've been told to be afraid of. Let's talk about the God who is love, the God who whispers you are enough, the God who is not waiting for you to be perfect, but is right here in the messiness of your life, holding space for you. There is a lot of noise around what God is supposed to be. Some say God is a judge, watching and waiting for us to slip up. Others say God is power, a force that moves the universe according to some grand, untouchable plan. But what if the most profound truth is much simpler? What if God is love? Not just the kind of love we read about in poetry or see in movies, but the kind that binds us together, that breaks us open, that reminds us we are not alone. Love is the one thing that exists beyond reason, beyond explanation. It is the one force that keeps us going when logic says we should stop. Love is the thing that whispers to us in the middle of our darkest nights, keep going. It is what makes us show up for each other, even when we are tired, even when we are hurt. When we feel the warmth of a friend's embrace after a hard day. When we hear a stranger's kind words, just when we need them most, what if that is God? What if God is not in the thunder or the lightning, not in the loud proclamations or the grand miracles, but in the quiet moments of connection? Think about the people who have changed your life. Maybe it was a teacher who believed in you when no one else did. Maybe it was a friend who sat with you in silence when you had no words. Maybe it was a parent who kept showing up even when they didn't have all the answers. These are not just acts of kindness. These are moments of divinity in human form. God is not an idea we chase. God is the feeling that passes between two people when one says, I see you, and the other says, I am here. It is the courage to be open, even when it is easier to shut down. It is the willingness to listen, even when we don't fully understand. It is the act of standing in the middle of someone else's pain without trying to fix it, without trying to explain it away, but simply saying, you are not alone. And if love is God, then connection is how we experience the divine. Think about how we are wired as human beings. We crave connection like we crave air. Babies who are not held do not thrive. Adults who lack meaningful relationships struggle, no matter how much success they achieve. We were never meant to do this life alone. But connection takes courage. Love takes vulnerability. And this is where we get stuck. We put up walls. We tell ourselves we don't need people. We convince ourselves that if we can just be strong enough, independent enough, we won't have to risk being hurt. But love real, transformative love asks us to risk everything. It asks us to let ourselves be seen even when we are afraid. It asks us to trust, even when we've been let down before. It asks us to open our hearts, even when the world tells us to close them. And in that space, in that terrifyingly beautiful space where we choose love over fear, where we choose connection over isolation, where we choose to reach out instead of pull away, that is where we find God. God is not something we have to earn. God is not waiting for us to be perfect. God exists in the moments we choose to love, in the moments we choose to connect, in the moments we let ourselves be human together. Because in the end, love is not just something we feel, it is something we do. It is how we show up. It is how we hold space for each other. It is how we make it through this life together. We spend so much of our lives trying to be strong. We are taught that strength means having all the answers, keeping it together, never showing weakness. We wear our independence like armor, believing that if we don't need anyone, we can't be hurt. But what if real strength isn't about having it all figured out? What if real strength is the willingness to be vulnerable? Vulnerability is terrifying because it requires us to show up as we are without the mask, without the act, without the illusion of control. It is stepping into the unknown, admitting that we don't have all the answers, and trusting that we are still enough. And this is where we find God, not in our certainty, but in our questions. Not in our perfection, but in our willingness to be seen. Not in the moments when we have it all together, but in the moments when we are cracked open, raw and real. We often think of faith as something solid, something unwavering, but true faith is not about knowing everything will turn out the way we want. True faith is standing in the uncertainty, in the discomfort, in the mess of life, and still choosing to believe that we are held. That even in our most vulnerable moments, we are not alone. God is not found in the illusion of perfection. God is found in the breaking, in the surrender, in the moment we drop to our knees and say, I don't know how to do this, but I am willing to try. Think about the most profound moments of connection in your life, the times when you have felt closest to another person. Were they moments of power and control? Or were they moments of honesty when you let someone see the real you? Maybe it was the first time you told someone you loved them without knowing if they would say it back. Maybe it was the time you admitted you were struggling and instead of turning away, someone reached for your hand. Maybe it was when you let your guard down and said, I need help. Those moments of vulnerability, they are sacred. Because when we allow ourselves to be truly seen, we make space for something greater than ourselves. We make space for connection. We make space for love. We make space for God. But vulnerability is not just about the big moments. It is in the everyday choices we make. It is in choosing to love, even when we know love comes with the risk of loss. It is in choosing to speak our truth. Even when our voice shakes, it is in showing up fully, even when we are afraid. God does not ask us to be fearless. God asks us to walk through our fear with open hearts. And yet we resist. We tell ourselves that vulnerability is weakness, that if we just try hard or push through, stay guarded, we can avoid pain. But the walls we build to keep ourselves safe are the same walls that keep love out. We were not created to be invincible. We were created to be human, to feel deeply, to take risks, to open ourselves to the beauty and the pain of life. And it is in that openness, in that surrender, in that willingness to be seen as we are, that we find something sacred. Because in the end, God is not found in our pretending. God is found in our truth. We live in a world that glorifies perfection. The perfect career, the perfect relationship, the perfect body, the perfect life. We are taught that if we can just get everything right, if we can fix our flaws, erase our mistakes, and present the best version of ourselves, then we will finally be worthy. Then we will finally be enough. But what if we've had it all wrong? What if God is not in the pursuit of perfection, but in the acceptance of imperfection? What if the cracks, the scars, the messy, unfinished parts of our lives are not things to be ashamed of, but places where God meets us the most? We spend so much time trying to smooth out the rough edges of who we are. We think that if we can just prove ourselves, be stronger, be smarter, be more in control, then maybe we will finally be deserving of love, of grace, of belonging. But the truth is, we are not loved because we are perfect. We are loved because we are human, because we are real, because we are willing to show up, flaws and all, and say, here I am. Think about the people you love the most. Do you love them because they are perfect? Or do you love them because they are real? Because they are honest about their struggles, because they have faced hardship, made mistakes, and kept going anyway. Perfection is an illusion. It is something we chase but can never truly reach. And in that chase, we miss the beauty of what is right in front of us. We miss the lessons that come from failure. We miss the connection that comes from honesty. We miss the presence of God in the moments when we feel the most unworthy. Because God is not waiting for us to get everything right. God is not saying, come back when you figured it all out. God is here, in the middle of our doubts, in the moments when we fall short, in the times when we feel broken and unfixable. It is in those moments when we let go of the pressure to be perfect, when we surrender to what is real, that we feel something deeper than achievement, deeper than success. We feel grace. We feel love that does not have conditions, love that does not say, you will be worthy when, but instead says, you are worthy now. The most beautiful things in this life are not perfect. Look at nature. The mountains are rugged and uneven. The ocean is unpredictable. The most breathtaking pieces of art are not flawless. They are textured, layered, filled with depth and imperfections that make them unique. And yet we still believe that we must be different, that we must be polished and untouchable to be enough. But what if the places we try to hide are actually the places where we are most connected to the divine? What if our brokenness is not something to be ashamed of, but something that makes us whole? Some of the strongest, most compassionate people are not the ones who have lived perfect lives. They are the ones who have been through fire and emerged with more love, more empathy, more wisdom. They are the ones who have failed, who have fallen, who have doubted, and still chose to keep going. God is not asking us to be flawless. God is asking us to be real. to embrace the imperfections, the uncertainties, the struggles, and see them not as signs that we are unworthy, but as proof that we are alive, proof that we are learning, proof that we are growing, because the goal has never been to be perfect. The goal has always been to be whole. Courage is one of those words we admire from a distance. We talk about it in stories and history books in the lives of heroes who stood against impossible odds. We imagine courage as something grand, something reserved for the strongest, the bravest, the ones who have no fear. But real courage isn't about being fearless. It's about showing up even when fear is screaming at you to turn back. It's about taking one more step when everything in you wants to stop. And if we look closely, we realize that this kind of courage, the quiet, steady kind, is where we find God. We think of God as power, as strength, as an unstoppable force. But what if God is not in the absence of fear, but in the choice to move forward despite it? What if God is not found in the moments where we feel completely in control, but in the moments where we step into uncertainty, knowing we might fall, but trying anyway? Courage is not just in the big, life-changing moments. It is in the small, everyday choices we make. It takes courage to tell the truth when a lie would be easier. It takes courage to ask for help when we'd rather struggle in silence. It takes courage to love, knowing love comes with the risk of loss. And every time we choose courage over comfort, we are stepping into something sacred. God is not found in playing it safe. God is found in the moments where we stand at the edge of the unknown, take a deep breath, and decide to leap. Think about the times in your life when you've been afraid. Maybe it was the moment you walked away from something that no longer served you, even though you didn't know what came next. Maybe it was the time you stood up for yourself, even when your voice shook. Maybe it was when you loved someone fully without holding back, even though there was no guarantee they would stay. Those moments weren't easy, but they were holy. Because courage is not about eliminating fear, it's about trusting that there is something greater than fear. It's about believing that even in the unknown, even in the risk, even in the possibility of failure, we are not alone. Fear tells us to shrink, to stay small, to avoid anything that might break us. But God does not call us to live small lives. God does not ask us to stay in our comfort zones. God asks us to step forward, to trust, to dare. And yet we resist. We tell ourselves we are not ready, that we need more time, more certainty, more reassurance. We wait for the fear to disappear before we take action. But fear never truly disappears. It lingers, waiting for permission to control us. Courage is the decision to move forward anyway. It is in the person who gets back up after life has knocked them down. It is in the one who forgives, even when it's hard. It is in the dreamer who takes a chance on something new, even when everyone else says it's impossible. Courage is not about never breaking. It is about rising after we fall. And every time we rise, every time we choose bravery over fear, we are stepping closer to the divine. Because God is not found in perfection, in certainty, and having all the answers. God is found in the willingness to keep going, to keep believing, to keep stepping into the unknown with nothing but faith and an open heart. We spend so much of our lives searching for meaning, for purpose, for something greater than ourselves. We look to the skies, to sacred texts, to the words of wise teachers. We listen for a voice, for a sign, for confirmation that we are not alone. But what if we have been searching in the wrong place? What if the divine we long for has never been outside of us, but within us all along? We are taught to look for God in grand gestures, in miracles, in the extraordinary. But God is not just in the parting of seas or in the fire from the sky. God is in the quiet moments, in the stillness, in the breath we take when we pause long enough to listen. We are not separate from God. We were never separate. The same force that moves the stars moves through us. The same love that created the world is the love that beats in our own hearts. And yet we doubt it. We doubt ourselves. We look at our flaws, our mistakes, our struggles, and we convince ourselves that we are not worthy, that we are too broken, too imperfect, too lost to carry something as divine as God within us. But what if God is not found in perfection, but in the very places we believe make us unworthy? What if the divine is in our questions, in our doubts, in the way we break open and rebuild ourselves again and again? We spend our lives looking for something we already have. We search for wisdom, not realizing that the quiet knowing we feel deep in our bones, that voice that whispers, "You are more than this moment," You are more than your fear is the voice of something greater than ourselves. We think we need permission to be enough. We think we need to earn our place in something divine. But when a tree grows, it does not ask if it is worthy of the sunlight. When the ocean waves crash against the shore, they do not ask if they are enough. They simply are. And so are we, but we've been conditioned to believe that God is distant, that we must work, achieve, and prove ourselves before we can be close to something holy, that only the best of us, the most righteous, the most disciplined, can be in the presence of the divine. But God is not waiting for us to be perfect. God is in the child who laughs freely, in the artist who pours their soul onto a canvas, in the mother who holds her baby close in the quiet hours of the night. God is in the tears we shed when we think no one is watching. God is in the moment we sit in silence and feel something bigger than ourselves move within us. God is in the kindness of strangers, in the way we reach for each other, in the moments we choose love over fear. We do not need to seek God in temples built by human hands. We do not need to wait for a sign to know we are already enough. The greatest spiritual journey is not about finding something outside of ourselves. It is about remembering that we have always been connected, remembering that the love, the power, the wisdom we seek is already within us. We do not need to chase divinity. We need only to trust that it has been here all along. We spend so much of our lives searching for love, for purpose, for something greater than ourselves. We chase perfection, thinking it will make us worthy. We guard ourselves against vulnerability, fearing it will make us weak. We hesitate to step into courage, believing fear must disappear first. And all the while, we look outside of ourselves for God, hoping to find some echad that isn't within us all along. But God is not waiting for us to become someone else. God is here in the love that connects us, in the strength found in our brokenness, in the courage it takes to keep going, and in the quiet truth that we are already enough. We do not need to be perfect to be worthy. We do not need to be fearless to be brave. We do not need to go searching for God in distant places when the divine has always been woven into the fabric of who we are. Because God is love, God is vulnerability, God is courage, God is in our imperfections. And God is already within us, guiding us, calling us, reminding us that we are and have always been enough.